Hi, it's Richard here from Intelligent Advisor IT Consulting with the next and indeed the last for the time being in our series about the example projects that are provided with Oracle Policy Modeling. So this time round, we're going to be looking at the example project called Warranty. As you can see, it's from the automotive and healthcare, and well, it's targeting those kind of industries. And it's an online self-service interview for use perhaps by a customer or indeed by an agent in a call center. And the goal is to help the user in logging a warranty issue with a product, perhaps to describe the nature of the problem, and associate it with, for example, an incident or a service request. Because some of the concepts that are in the interview are in the healthcare industry, there is also a section relating to reporting that information, adverse event, as they call it, reporting. It produces documentation for reporting purposes, so you can see in the key features that it includes forms. And it also has a rich interview, which includes dynamic content as well as explanations. So now that we know the basics of the project, let's dig in and see what we might use as learning material. So the data model is quite straightforward. We have a variety of information that is entered as input. So, like the brand name, the history of the device, if it's a medical issue, or is it a patient that has notified us of a problem with a product, the place of purchase, things like that. And then we have things like the date and the serial number. We have a variety of booleans which are used to identify or help us identify the kind of device it is and the kind of problem it's having. For example, the device is experiencing problems with connectivity if the user tells us that the problem type is cannot connect to tower. For example, you're connecting a peripheral to a PC tower or something like that. So we use these booleans to clarify into yes, no logical statements the different data collected from the user. And then we have a variety of other items, such as the issue needs to be reported to the FDA. This is a goal, so we need to be able to find out whether if it's a medical device and the issue has caused harm to the user, this adverse event has to be reported to the Federal Drug Administration. These are just examples. So there are a couple of goals. Is the problem covered by a warranty? We need to find that out. And if the device was purchased within the last 6 months, then it is covered by the warranty. So a fairly, I'd say, straightforward, easy to read interview. And the next thing we need to do is proceed over to the rules. As you can see, the rules have been broken down into several areas. General rules, such as the issue types, are where we'll find the definition of those clarifications, where we said that the issue is an electrical problem if, those sort of things. So, yeah. So there you'll see the device is a GPS. If the device is experiencing a navigation problem, well, I must then, by logical definition, it is a GPS. And we also have some problems to be displayed, and this is using those booleans. So if there's a device as a blood pressure monitor, and then it could be that inconsistent readings is the problem that's the answer. So this is the variety of information. We've got some validation rules, which we've covered in other interviews, so we won't go into those. Warranty rules will help us understand whether the product is under warranty. And you'll recall a moment ago we saw that there was a rule that said if the product was purchased no more than 6 months ago, then it is covered under warranty. And this is where we'll find the definition, both of the goal and also the sub-rule, which says it was purchased in the last 6 months if the date of purchase is greater than or equal to the date 6 months before the current date. Basically, was it purchased in the last 6 months? Moving on now, we have some information for the report form. So this is going to generate a report, a form, and most reports use a notion of default values. We actually covered this off in another video in this series. So rather than having a form that fills up with unknown, 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 we typically give those attributes default values. So I won't go in there again. And then we have some interpretive rules. And these are literally to help us interpret the data, such as a Boolean to define whether the patient is male or female. And then we have a variety of Booleans with some simple logic behind them. The initial reporter has said they will not report to the FDA if the patient is intending to report the event to the FDA themselves is certain, and the patient is not intending to report the event to the FDA themselves. So basically, have you answered this question, which is why we use the certain function, and have you said no, in which case we can definitively say you're not intending to report it to the FDA. Finally, we'll come down to the follow-up actions. So there's an entity you might have seen called the message with messages. So it's no great surprise that if we take a look at this, we'll find an inference table. So it's going to create messages, and there are 2 messages. And you'll see a little note up above. It's used in this demo if you choose to connect it to Oracle Engagement Cloud. Then you can push this into messages in relation to the service request, complete with message text and a message ID. So I don't think we need to go into too much more detail about the rules themselves. Let's take a look at the interview. The interview is made up of several stages with multiple screens. It's a fairly straightforward styling layout. A few changes have been made to the styling, not much. Perhaps that could be something that you could extend it in your own version. You could, for example, use a header and show a header, and maybe add an image to the header. Just experiment a little bit with the options for a header. So I'll go and browse and see if I have an image that I can use. No guarantee that I have an image. Let's go into projects. Yeah, hey, here's an image. As always, let's use this small logo. So we're now going to use this in our interview. I'll just go make sure that I did actually display it. Yes, I did. So yes, and I'll take off the hide when embedded, and we'll run our interview just to make sure that our new image is displaying. I'll probably take the image away because it'll be so large that it'll dominate the entire screen. That's not too bad. So now we have our interview, and it says, welcome, what device are you experiencing a problem with? So we have a number of devices. I'll say I have a problem with my phone, and the problem is that the device won't turn on. Actually, no, let's do electrical shock. Next, we have an informational screen that says we take this very seriously because obviously it's a big deal if a phone starts giving you electric shock. You'll notice that a variety of screens are no longer relevant because they are talking about medical devices or other blood pressure devices and so forth. So in terms of the interview itself, it will use the concept of visibility. So you'll see that if I look at arm cuffs, it says show screen if the device is experiencing problem with the arm cuff tightness is true, and otherwise it simply won't display. So in our case, because that's not relevant to us, the interview is not being displayed. There we go. And we'll move on to the next screen. This is the model number, the serial number. The date of purchase was, let's say, August the 9th of this year. And aside from the current issues, do you want us to give us some feedback? I'll say I'm pretty happy with it. Great phone. And we'll move on to the final stage, and it says what's the service request ID. Because this was designed to be integrated with Engagement Cloud, you might notice a couple of extra fields, extra attributes that are being asked for. And so we now have a follow-up task has been created. So if we go and look at our data, we'll see that we have data here, and it says the interview has been completed. It's an external interview has been completed, code number 1, and the data that I entered as regards my location and so forth is in the interview. Let's go back and do it again, and this time I'll say it's a blood pressure monitor and the arm cuff is too tight. And is this causing us any harm? We'll say yes it is. When did this occur? And now we've moved into the adverse event. So we're saying it caused hospitalization. It's a terrible thing to say, but well, let's do this. device exploded. So obviously you can see that we're moving into a different part of the interview now. Have you adjusted the arm cuff? Create a service request if you want to go further. Date of purchase. Let's do 10th of October. Who is operating the device? The patient or a health professional or other? Let's say the patient. Are you intending to report this to the FDA? So we are required as the manufacturer to report this to the FDA, but you can also admit it. So yes, I'm going to do this myself. Okay, I fill in my details. So you'll notice how the different screens have appeared because of the context being slightly different. And we'll carry on now, and we'll get back to this idea of a service request ID because of the integration. And we scroll down, and it says the FDA form 3500B has been generated and attached to this service request, because in the case of an FDA adverse event, we need to fill out this form. So I can open up this, and surprise, surprise, we're going to see that we've generated a form, and the form has been pre-filled with my responses to facilitate in the declaration of the adverse event. As you can see, all my choices have been filled in. Very nicely done. There we go. So it's a good example of a properly formatted and well thought out form. So that's, if you like, the interview itself. If I return to the project in Oracle Policy Modeling, this is where the form, of course, is stored. You'll notice that it was built on a PDF template because it was actually taken from a standardized PDF made available by the authority. So in these cases, it can be easier to use a PDF as a starting template rather than a traditional RTF template. You'll recall that forms can be built using Word for RTF or any PDF editor if you're going to use a PDF. Recall that you can choose from here, from the new button when you create a form, to choose either RTF or PDF. What else do we need to discuss that is in this interview? You'll notice that there are a couple of value lists. So if you wanted to extend this interview, I'd say that the first thing I would do would be to add a problem type. And then work from the problem type to be able to create a screen to cover off a particular scenario with a particular kind of device or product. That's just my suggestion. We could also, if you're into that kind of thing, or if you have a specific need to understand how it works, we could create a translation file. We spoke briefly about translations in the previous example, but I could say that I want to create a translation for French France, so French as it's spoken in metropolitan France. It's going to create me an Excel file, and in this Excel file will be all of those traditional, all of those strings, all of those pieces of text that are used in the current default. So there you go. Okay, so there's a warning about accessibility. There's a warning to tell me that because I've added a French language, it's expecting that this PDF file that we created earlier should now also exist in a French version. So it's saying this particular file doesn't exist, so I'll use the English one instead. You'll recall that forms are stored in a particular folder of your project. So if I go open up the project file, here we go, and go into form templates, you'll see currently there's only one language in here, and this is where the PDF is. There you go. So if I wanted to simulate what happens when you need to create a new language, is you create a folder that corresponds to the four character language code, and then you go and modify that one or replace it with another one or create an RTF file. But the point is that now the warning message has gone away because it's understood that this now exists in two versions because there is a second language specified. You'll also be able to open this up and you'll recall that a translation file works around a really simple idea. Everything is given here in the original text. So this is the original version, and then you have the different versions: questions, uncertain, negative, positive, and so forth. And this is true also for attributes, relationships. There aren't any screen titles, events, which are warning or error messages that you've written in your rules, standardized messages which typically don't have to be modified because they're already provided, value lists, and you'll notice that in the translated text column, everything is preceded with an exclamation mark. So basically that's telling you that this hasn't been translated yet. If I translate this to pas de son ou autre, I don't need to put that exclamation. My goal is to change the text and take away the exclamation mark, because that's how it understands that I've translated it. So if I close this file and save, when I debug the interview, as I did before, now, because of the added translation file, I'll be able to switch to the translation. And of course, I only changed 3 words, so I'd have to go hunting and find those words and see where they were. I think I changed something in here. There we go. You'll see that pas de son has been added, or rather replaces the original English language version with the French version. Same for other. So you can test this idea of translation before you've finished all the translations. What else do we need to look at in this project? Well, I would say that it looks like I've accidentally changed the region. When you change the region, you will see warning messages like this, because if you change from, for example, United States to France, then things like dates and numbers and even separators will be changed, which means that some of your rules might need to go back and be edited, which is why you have this warning message here. I don't know, I guess I must have accidentally changed the region. So that just about wraps it up for our warranty. I'd say it's a good learning project because there's lots of different scenarios, but it's all really quite simple to follow. I would like to say that it has a simple enough data model that you can consider adding new booleans to cover off new devices, new problems with new devices. So it gives you a good workout, and you end up creating another screen, which means, of course, then you need to add some visibility logic to make sure that the screen only displayed when it was a particular kind of product. This would be a good workout for you if you were looking to extend it, and also a good way of learning. This is the last in the current series of example projects. In a couple of weeks, we'll be starting the example decision service projects, of which there are 5 or 6. But for now, live from Oracle Cloud World 2022 in Las Vegas. Thank you for watching this very long series of videos, and I'll see you very shortly for more articles on intelligentadvisor.com.